Hey, White Sox fans! My name is Brett Ballantini, hosting the daily podcast, Sox Populi. This is number 178. Okay, listen, don't get scared. Don't shut off your podcast machine. We would never do that to you. We will not do a daily podcast. What would we be thinking if we did that? That's way too much pain and torture to inflict on any listener. Even if we don't know you, we don't want to do that to you. You're friends. But thank you again out there for joining us. We didn't plan on back-to-back podcasts, but guess what? Here we are. Melissa Sage-Bollenbach and Chrystal O'Keefe joining me to discuss the firing of Pedro Grifol, something we've been waiting for, something that probably comes, I don't know, a year late. I think conservatively speaking, a year late. So I guess first off, to you both, first, thanks for being troopers. This should be some discussion we can relish because we've really been waiting to have this discussion. Again, probably actually from longer than a year because from the moment of hire, we've just pretty much been counting down in the calendar when we could actually talk about Pedro Grifol being fired because we sort of all knew this was going to happen. So now that it is reality, shocking though it is here on the off day before Crosstown, feelings about Pedro Grifol no longer wearing the uniform and uttering the platitudes that he seemed to so magically do for some 279 or so, something like that, games.
Well, I'm not as stimulated as Chris Getz proposed to be today about getting a new search underway. That was a very interesting word he used, just stimulated. It's just, to me, of course, we all knew it was coming at some point, and it is way overdue, but it also is just a symbolic move. There's so many more issues, problems with this organization that are still looming and still problems, but I guess at least it was, I don't know, it's something better than nothing. I don't know. Sometimes something isn't better than nothing, but in this case, I'll take it because as long as they do not have to hear him on any more pre-conferences, press conferences, dugout interviews, whatever, because he had zero personality, and I'm more than happy to ceremoniously lose that piece of it, even if it is just optics.
Yeah, it may be. Chrystal?
Yeah, well, obviously, like what Melissa just said, don't mind the squeaking. She sounds like a chicken toy. The rot starts at the top, and nothing will actually change until, Willow. Nothing will actually change until Jerry is 6 feet under. And I am starting to think he's immortal. So will that even happen? But it was refreshing because I was tired of Pedro, like the first game that he managed with the White Sox. So that's cool. Grady Sizemore might not be the best substitution, but at least he's pretty to look at. So I can take that.
Yeah, we'll take anything at this point, If
you can stay awake during a game, maybe not make bonehead bullpen decisions, and look pretty doing it, then, the bar is in hell, so.
Yeah, that's a net win. Small measures, but they're still measures. The thing that struck me about Pedro is, many things. I understand you're going to come across as sort of soft-spoken is not the right word, really. And when you're like 15 games into a losing streak, of course, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be jacked to talk to the media. But you never had anything to say. It was always the same sort of stuff. And I get that there are a number of managers do that. But for a guy sort of pulled out of left field. This was clearly a surprise pick, even though we could all say, he's not getting paid anything. He's a nobody, so it's a perfect Sox pick. But him specifically, not really. To be so low key, really, I'm not sure how they ever connected him to inspirational. Even in an interview, even if he's saying everything, somehow he got the notes and he got all the answers early. He dumpster dove, got all the correct answers going into the interview and said them all. I just can't imagine in that interview he was inspiring. I know we can be cynical and say, well, they weren't going to pay. Of course, they're going to pick a bad candidate because they're not going to pay. You can not pay somebody and still have like an inspiring figure. He may not be a good manager, might be a great manager. I'm guessing anybody off the street might have come across to convey. You don't have to be like hung over and scream at the guy interviewing like Ozzie did to Ken Williams when he interviewed, but just something between drunken screaming and like low-key sleepy. You'd think that would be a guy who'd say, oh, he should be the manager. His persona was just, forget the results, which you can't do, but just a really seemingly uninspiring guy.
Well, he peaked at his reveal, right?
He did. He really did.
When he was introduced to all of us, like that was the peak.
Yeah.
Like, and then after that, it was all downhill because, he did have to see, he seemed to have a little bit of spice, a little bit of flair at that introduction. But that was it, man. That was all she wrote.
You're coming in after Tony La Russa. He was breathing, so he had more flair. There's no doubt about that. But you're right. Certainly, and we all were whining it to, even though in the back of our minds we're saying, oh, no, this is disaster. We knew this day in August, unfortunately, a year later, and it should have been, this day in August was coming. But yeah, of course, in the moment you get, caught up. He's got his great-looking family. He's saying the right things, even if he's reading off a teleprompter. He's saying the right things, so they can use for the video board all season when the Sox are surprisingly good, which of course never happens. All that stuff's cutting room floor. But Chrystal, there wasn't much about the guy at any point besides maybe day one, and even then, I don't know. That was inspiring.
No, the second I heard he was coming from the Royals anyway, I was like, okay, this is not going to be great. And then he was going on about how they were going to come out every day and kick ass. And I'm like, but you haven't kicked any ass. You're just getting your asses kicked every single day. Mm-hmm. So there was never anything about him that I thought was going to be anything special.
Yeah. I'd actually prepped this. I didn't update it based on the last loss of Pedro's career, which would be number 190. And you think, wow, that's not terrible for a career until you remember it's not even 2 full seasons, not so great. So I didn't update these, but I was going to use them in last night's podcast again, when we had no idea we were going to become a daily podcast here at Sox Populi. Pedro Grifol, using my dumb calculation, you can laugh at it if you want. It's brilliant. Just back off. Of managerial war, mix of run differential and team war, and a bunch of other special sauce that either doesn't exist or I'm just not going to tell you what it is. He is costing the White Sox this year, cost Ed, because he's gone now, negative 6.1 WAR. And that's, for 2/3 of a season. That's pretty impressive. That right here is 11th worst season in White Sox history. His pace was to the point where he had a chance to actually be, by my brilliant managerial WAR, which absolutely is not made up, to be the worst single season White Sox manager ever, which is interesting because last year he was acquitted much better last year. Clearly this guy has not had much to work with. Chris Getz, who helped hire him, and you could argue might have been the loudest voice in the room to hire him, given the Kansas City connection, because why don't we aim to be the Kansas City Royals, did nothing to equip the guy in either season. And you'd argue that 2024 is even more egregious because it's like, first of all, the way Getz talked and spoke, given that he was the man in control. Not much you can say other than him being in control of the 2024 team. He really did undercut his manager. Again, a lot of guilt, pox on every house, anywhere near 35th and Shields. But the performance, it does speak for itself. The guy in a number of levels was just not equipped to be a manager, and I'm not sure we can come up with any area that he did excel. But that's the thing that gets you, forget whether he's, good-looking, soft-spoken, came from the Royals, came from the Yankees. It really comes down to how the guy performs as manager, and he just came up woefully short there.
Yeah, very much so. You nailed it on the head. And I think what it is the fact that there were all these leaks often, that like players didn't respect him and players didn't like him. And then you'd have one player jump out and defend him, but then you'd still hear all these little side whispers and things about players not liking him. I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire, right?
Yeah.
So like he was supposed to be a clubhouse guy, like he couldn't even do that. So like he couldn't win, he couldn't do what he was supposed to do. He couldn't get him to execute. He couldn't get him to play defense. And he also wasn't a good clubhouse guy. So he missed on all the marks.
Yeah, Chrystal, did you buy into? Here's a wrinkle of a question. Either one of you can answer. We got this crazy hype this year, and it was so contrived. It just hurts. I mean, we're all experienced enough baseball fans. We're not just cracked out of the egg here. I mean, okay, so maybe that means we're cynical. I'm not sure. We're baseball fans, and we're Sox fans. How cynical can we be? But the season approaches and we're getting this fast jazz. He's got an acronym. I'm not sure if they were t-shirts. They probably were. They had that goofy, sort of cringy, like hype video about their little phrasing, having done nothing, coming off of 101 losses. And I get it. You got to try to spin something. But man, that was so very painful. How in the world, Chrystal, or Melissa, if you want to jump in, can you be almost... presumably he came up with this, and yet from the get-go, he seemed completely disconnected from it.
It kind of felt like an episode of Punk'd, if you remember that MTV show, where I was like constantly waiting for Ashton Kutcher to come out and be like, here's a qualified manager, and it never happened because everything he said just felt so completely unserious. I was like, where does this come from in your head that you think that this whole fast thing is anything that we want to hear? Like, I want you to just like actually coach this team and make them better. I don't want to hear your stupid little terminology and your voice after anything at this point. Like, I had to mute him during post-game shows. But no, I never was able to buy into it. Like I said, I was excited at first when he came in and he had that great video, but then like immediately went downhill. So no.
Yeah, I mean, whether you like the rah-rah stuff or not, at least do it. I mean, had they done, or like, grinder ball or what, that we've seen this, stuff over time. That pretty much every year some sort of phrase. It doesn't always get put front and center like in a commercial for the team type of thing, or like a social media hype, but at least do it. And I don't think for a second they did. They couldn't catch the ball from game one. I mean, that's like the fundamental piece. I'm not sure which letter in the acronym that was. It's a fundamental piece of it all, and they could not do that. I know you're only as good as the personnel that you have on the team, but they have a whole organization. They have at least a AAA organization to fuel guys who can catch the ball, and they couldn't even do that. Melissa, thoughts on fast? Are you now trying to like hide your fast T-shirt? I didn't mean to embarrass you.
So to me, it always had that like grade school vibe, right?
Oh, man.
We walked into class, or I mean, this is kind of Brett, a little past us probably, because we just went to school and nobody cared. But once my kids got there, Chrystal, you probably see it with your kids too, it was like they walked into class on the first day and the teacher had the theme all going and, everything was coordinated around the theme. That is what it felt like to me because, like the grinder ball and let the kids play. Like, I feel like some of that stuff like came forth organically. It like the season started or the, the team the year before kind of got the ball rolling. And so it kind of just morphed into that, where this was literally, I felt like contrived by a middle school teacher. And I'm sure that's what the players felt like. Like, this isn't anything that we've developed, together as a group of guys and come together around our philosophy. It is very much like, here you go. It's on your poster. Put your stickers every day. Look for your name. I'm going to put your sticker up there.
Well, and I think about it too. Like, we saw a very happy Tim Anderson, even under Tony La Russa. We saw a happy Tim Anderson that was actually like performing. And then Pedro comes in and he falls off. He looks like he does not ever want to be there. And a lot of the players look like that right now. Yeah. Except for like Gavin Sheets, who's licking boots or something. But like, the players clearly do not buy into it. I think they just feel like he's a joke too. And I mean, they should. At one point I was like, you know what, maybe we should just bring Ozzy back. Or I was talking to somebody else, and I was like, "What if we just like reanimate Billy Martin?" Because I would take that. Like, I would take no call over whatever this is.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, part of the reason Ken Harrelson fired Tony Russo is he thought he could get Billy Martin to manage, and then George Steinberg said, "No, I want compensation because I'm going to hire him again." Of course, he could always pull that out of his pocket, right? Because he always was going to hire him again. Even I think after his death, technically, he was going to still hire Billy Martin again. Melissa, to follow up, my theme in grammar school was who was going to get the clap out the chalkboard erasers first. I think that was the only theme. It was like, okay, you're here.
Yep, do your work.
Fun though.
Yeah. Here's your books. I thought I was going to forget it, but when I was covering the team, the theme was, and again, it wasn't anything they did a commercial about. I think it was Beast Mode, and they all had T-shirts of Beast Mode, and I was like, I think it's just we're wearing them because they gave them to us. I mean, I don't think it was like, wow, I believe in Beast Mode, but yeah, it was Beast Mode, and frankly, Beast Mode without a commercial is way better than Fast with commercial, because I think with their little social media community, I think was there even like a bleep? Didn't even somebody like cussing it? Like I think Pedro maybe even cussing it. Man, he was so gritty in that Fast hype thing. Oh my God, so silly. What an era. If not swallowed by a dozen years of misery, this would stand out so much uglier. And it may still, but I mean, we might not even have hit our low point yet. We are going to look maybe toward the future here in the second half. We're going to take a break now. I mean, chances are we'll go for another 2 hours, especially if Willow remains chilled. But who knows? Maybe it'll just be like 5 minutes and we're out. I don't know. I can't say. I'm the host, but I have no control of the show. We'll be back in a minute or so. Please hang with us because we have very valuable information about Pedro Grifol, the future of the Chicago White Sox, and what we're going to do without Fast to rally behind. We'll pick that up in about a minute. Hey, White Sox fans, my name is Brett Ballantini. Welcome to Ladies Night, episode 8 or so, I think. Oh, no, wait, hold on. Let me check down south. No, it is not Ladies Night at all. That's just a ladies podcast. Come on. No, this is Sox Populi, the new daily podcast presented by Sox Populi, maybe even Southside Sox if you want to cheat. I don't know. People who write about the White Sox, we're a little confused this season. Not as confused as the Chicago White Sox. However, all right, I'm going to posit something to you both. Chrystal O'Keefe, my guest, host of Visiting Dugout and frequent contributor, though it does seem like it's been a couple of years since I've seen you, Chrystal, frequent contributor on the Mothership podcast, and Melissa Sage-Bollenbach, who is the host of the aforementioned Ladies Night. She was about to interrupt this podcast and cancel it. She was going to override and hit the end recording button because there's no way I'm going to be able to steal and cheat and take away Ladies Night from her. She's the host of that podcast. And again, a frequent guest, all too frequent, sorry, Melissa, guest on the Sox Populi Mothership. All right, let me posit this. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't. I thought in yesterday's podcast, when I said, what was that point that I thought nobody, oh yeah, it was the Garrett Crochet thing. I thought everybody was going to jump on me for saying that maybe, that shouldn't have gone down the way it was, and maybe the White Sox aren't totally guilty there. And I think the three of you agreed with me. So maybe this is going to happen this way too. My question is, I will just put my pencil down and wait to give my answer, but is the Pedro, despite our celebration, despite the utter mockery of the FAST acronym, is firing Pedro Grifol on August 8th, 2024, of a disastrous 2024 season where the White Sox are currently 28-89 and en route to, clearly it's already sort of like clinched one of the worst professional seasons ever, and they could actually end up at the top of that list. Is firing Pedro Grifol at this moment a bad thing, or is it a good thing? I'm curious to know your thoughts on this.
Actually, stop it. I actually think it's a good thing just because it's going to put some fresh air back into this decrepit, moldy dugout that we've got. And I don't want to sound ageist at all, but again, there's a younger player, there's a younger manager who has played, who has this experience, who knows what he's doing, has worked in this type of role, not as big as he has now, but he's been there, and I feel like he can relate to these players more, and Pedro just could not. Like, so I feel like as long as Grady can just get through to them, and I mean, we've got new coaches everywhere else, bench coaches, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just gonna, not that it's gonna help this late, like winning games, but I think they'll at least be more competitive games, and they'll be a little bit more interesting to watch. I mean, I know they're still gonna lose. I don't how many games they have left.
Yeah, they got 45 or so. So 120 seems a given.
A little bit more tolerable to watch these games now, I guess.
Easier to watch the post-game news conference with
I
the
don't have to
manager
mute
at the
it.
very least.
I don't have to mute it.
Yeah. All right, Melissa, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I mean, the obvious answer, of course, I will not deny. I think you already know my answer here, but I will not deny it's a good thing. Of course, it's a good thing. Again, it should happen more than a year ago. But Melissa, your thoughts, drilling down into it a little bit, good thing or bad thing here in August in the lost season to ditch Pedro?
So I'm going to split it because honestly, I feel like, I mean, we touched on the personality part. So like that is obviously a really good thing, but also to me, it's a tryout for so many of these young guys that are already here and that are in the pipeline to come. I didn't want him anywhere near any more of these guys.
Yeah.
And so to me, that is my biggest win in all of this because it's just kind of the ceremonious move. It doesn't mean a whole lot, but it could really actually mean a lot because you can't connect to current major league players. How in the world is he going to connect with these young guys, which we already know based on the Oscar Cola situation, Luis Robert Jr. to an extent too, because I mean, he's still pretty dang young himself. Mm-hmm. So I just don't want him anywhere near any of the new guys coming up and tainting and tarnishing them because they're already coming up into a difficult situation. They didn't need to deal with his crap on top of it. So there is my other good point. The bad point, I think, by not just letting him just wear it for the rest of the year, is that now it gives these guys who they've kind of just plucked and placed, they could actually like show up and be like, make a case for themselves to like keep the job. And then the whole thing with the press conference today about like, oh, we're going to do a deep dive search and we're going to find somebody who's experienced in another major league uniform and all this rah stuff that's supposed to get us pumped up about going to other organizations and getting their good guys. We could just end up with the same old because, oh my gosh, did you see what good job he did? He turned him around. They won 15 more games.
Yeah, right.
So there's my bad.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Melissa. I think you brought it up in past podcasts too. The influence, and I think we all have harumphed in agreement that the influence that Pedro exerts on younger players, of course, any players, but certainly young players, Colas being sort of the headliner there, but who knows who else? Certainly Lenin Sosa has been jacked around, whether he's personally been, directly affected by Pedro. Yeah, that is something, okay, yeah, I would want to bubble wrap all those guys to stay safe from harm from that guy. So I definitely see that wrinkle of it as definitely being a good thing. Specifically, the reason I think it's bad, aside from just, hey, these guys should wear it for what they've done. We're not going to, it's like death penalty or life in prison to get strangely morose or creepy by it. But really, here's my key point is Getz he's manipulating this to have kept him around long enough because, listen, I think without knowing, we know he was a major voice, if not second to Rick Hahn in hiring Pedro. He might have been the voice that just kept bugging, sitting right next with his arm around Rick. Rick's probably just fatigued. He's like, why am I even still doing this? How's I going to collect the money? Whatever. Jerry's never going to pay for anything. So, Chris has got his arm whispering in his ear. So, a clear influence, if not the influence, in hiring Pedro. So he had to wait long enough instead of firing him like last August, which would be very warranted, long enough to not seem like a total flake, but also early enough that he's not being shown the door at the same time. That's my big concern here. Now as we always said, why do we want Rick Hahn making the trades? Why do we want Rick Hahn going into the offseason, signing the free agents? Why do we want Chris Getz picking this next manager from outside the organization, which apparently means like American Legion ball, because who are we going to pay to lure here? I mean, I know pitch an up-and-coming guy who hasn't had the big chair, bench coach, pitching coach, maybe Skip Schumacher for some reason. It's one of 30 jobs, and it's in Chicago, despite how poisoned the Chicago White Sox are now. So you're going to get guys, but you're not going to pay them. So he's handcuffed. He's still going to get to choose this guy, and then we're going to do this dance where the guy's got to stick around at least for a year, whether he's lousy or not. You think there's a law of averages would say at some point the White Sox just get lucky? I mean, I guess they got lucky with Ozzie. There's nothing necessarily that said he was going to be a great manager, no matter whether you agree with that notion or not. They won a World Series. But the White Sox are going to find a way to get the least out of anybody they pick. And the fact that Chris Getz is part of it, unless we have now Josh Barfield being the guy with his arm around Chris, saying, hey, you hire me, whisper in his ear, this is the guy, which means it's going to be a Cleveland dude, or Arizona dude. And maybe we want that. But there's this weird domino effect happening where it's just like, how are we ever going to – I know it all starts with Jerry, unless Jerry is no longer with the team, meaning very likely 6 feet under, nothing will ever change, blah, 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 blah. And that may be true, so this is all just silly. Why do we even do this podcast? Why are we doing a daily podcast now? This is crazy. But the idea that Chris Getz now is just – he hasn't gone so – I mean, my thinking is you ride out the season and you lose your 122 or whatever. Chris Getz maybe doesn't – he maybe, I would think he shouldn't, but maybe doesn't survive. If he's like, no, Jerry, you can't fire me yet. I'm doing the managerial search that you told me I should do. What else are you paying me for? That's the part that frustrates me is I think this ensures, Getz has sort of like another run. He's got like another cycle, and I don't think I want that. I know it's flaky to fire the guy you hired less than a year ago. Or what, at the end of the season, it would have been just a year and change. But there's also plenty of evidence that says this isn't the guy for the job. So that, to me, is one reason why I think it's bad. You ride out with this crew, and it maybe is a little easier just to sweep. Or Jerry even says, hey, one of my sons or daughter or whoever, cousin, make this decision for me. I don't want to make it. And hopefully anybody with a clear head would say, all right, everybody who's got an office at 35th and Shields, gone. Here are your boxes, go, and we'll just start filling in with people. So that's what's frustrating me about keeping Pedro on, because that means we got more Getz. And if we don't like the decisions Getz have made, and I don't think there's any way, particularly talking to my two esteemed guests here, to say that it's anything but a mixed bag, and probably a negative bag based on definitely certain decisions made twice now by the White Sox, that you can't really trust his decision-making. So why are we trusting him for the guy who's going to lead the team for, I don't know what, the next 2 or 3 years? Unless it's so disastrous, you got to bail on him a year and a half in. That's what's frustrated me about it. Sorry for the long soliloquy there. Clearly, I'm so frustrated. I'm not ready to do daily podcasts, so I guess we won't. To the two of you, there was talk. Last topic here. Trust me, we'll all bump soon. The last topic here is going to be Chris Getz coming out for whatever reason saying absolutely outside of the organization. Because he hasn't really started a search, but he knows that enough that certainly Justin Jershel, I always think of Steve Bichelle, I can't pronounce his last name, can't hack Sergio Santos, perhaps for good reason, given the fact Birmingham's a 500 team now, cannot possibly be considered. Grady Sizemore, sorry, buddy. Don't care what you do. You're part of the organization. You can't be considered. Weird thing to say, but do you buy it? And ultimately, where do you think the search is going to go? Is it going to be dog and pony show? Does he already know who he's going to hire? Or is it really going to be like he's going to talk to 50 guys, which, of course, would be so not White Sox. But thoughts on what this search is going to be? Because, Getz is he's just chomping at the bit to hire another guy that's going to somehow work out better than Pedro Grifol. Or is he just calling somebody at the Royals?
So who is the oh my God, Will, every single time. Who is managing like the Charlotte Knights right now? Because I could just see them getting a call up.
Yeah, that's Justin. Now he's the third base coach, so he's right there. And now Pat Listash, who is a longtime major leaguer, has taken over there, so he would also qualify as somebody who could get called up. And you're right. I mean, that would be a totally logical thing. Like, that guy's cheap.
Or I could see them doing the exact same thing where we accidentally get a graphic with AJ Hinch's autograph. Like, see, we tried. Like, I feel like that was just total manipulation on their like they intended to do that. They were like, we're going to get their hopes up and think that we even talked to AJ Hinch, but in reality, we didn't.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be another one of those situations where they're like, yeah, welcome back this person. Just kidding.
Yeah.
This guy came from the Cannonballers. Yeah. It's just going to be so bad.
Yeah. No, right or wrong. And there were, I think, more people in favor. I wasn't. And more people in favor of AJ Hinch to be the manager than not. So, yeah, I'm not even sure what the logic is there, because then you get a number of people, let's say 60% of the fan base, sort of excited, and then it's not like an AJ Hinch-like guy who just didn't cheat the trash can. It's Tony La Russa. I mean, you can't really set up to slap your fan base worse than that.
No, and it's going to be that again, or it's going to be like, hey, let's bring AJ in to coach. He has no experience, but like it's going to be someone like that. It's going to stay in the organization no matter what.
Yeah, it's going to be AJ because it's like he won't stop calling me, just bugging me. So I just said, okay, take the job. Yeah, it's going to be something weird like that. Or
they're going to just right their wrong and bring back Ricky.
I would add, well, that might be a whole nother topic. Sorry, you guys stick around for another hour. I would, I'm not really, I don't know where I stand on AJ. And I mean, this is sort of a silly topic, but part of me would find it delicious because he did, I don't know about eviscerated, but he definitely has been very critical of Chris Getz. So that's just like Jerry hiring him. So I sort of like the idea, as much dysfunction as that will breed, is having the manager and the general manager sort of not liking each other. The White Sox deserve that. Melissa, thoughts on the managerial search that's upcoming?
Yeah, I think the laughter is like spot on because it's gonna be a circus. It's gonna be a shit show. It's gonna be, oh, we interviewed all these people, which of course we have no way of confirming, right? We interviewed all these people from outside organizations. We got all these great ideas and insights that we didn't even think about, but yet we hired, like Chrystal said, so-and-so from the Winston-Salem Dash or something. It's going to, because I just think it's going to be a super hard sell on anybody, even though Chicago is a great city, to walk into this dumpster fire because it is in such a bad place, like historically bad, like we talked about last night, like the worst it's ever been. And so there's a difference in coming into a situation where maybe the team has struggled for a couple of years, but I mean, we literally like jumped off a cliff and we went from the top of the cliff into the very bottom of the valley. And I would think it would take a very brave soul from outside this organization to want to even touch that with a 10-foot pole. That's
a very good point, Melissa, in that this isn't the Tampa Rays where they're not going to pay. They're not going to pay for anybody, but you also know you're consistently going to be competitive, and there's always something to call up. The White Sox have they're an average organization right now. They've worked themselves up with a ton of trades, trading their top tier talent to beef up what have been, I guess, everybody's always excited about the draft, but can't be that great because we're still an average organization, probably at best, especially if you don't consider these guys brought in. We're below average in terms of draft picks. So you not only know you're going in, you're going to say all the right things in your interview, but your owner's not going to pay for guys. The trades aren't going to be shrewd at best. Maybe it's going to be a wash. You do not have enough of a talent base coming up. I mean, you're handcuffed going in. Forget even all the bad PR. Jerry's old, or they had this record losing streak, or what. There's enough sort of bad vibes. You could probably get past that. But in the real stuff, when you ask yourself, do I want to? We've all been in this position. Do I want to take this job? You ask yourself that, and as much as it's like, wow, this is 1 of 30, I might never get this chance again. This might be one, despite it being Chicago, that you might really have to think hard about, like, oh, man, I don't know. I don't think this is the right. I mean, if you're being honest with yourself, it's not the right move for you. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're literally a person off the street. Any one of the three of us, we'd have to think, do I want to set myself up for this kind of evisceration as a professional, as a human being? Because you're just asking for slap after slap after slap. And that's if you're handling it great. Pedro could have been Ricky Renteria, who by all accounts, totally decent guy. The team, aside from maybe like Dallas Keuchel, jerk, loved him, had that bond, sort of grew up with the team. I mean, obviously he got hosed, and yeah, if anything, Chrystal, there would be some kind of weird justice. Well, no, actually, he'd be tortured. Don't do that to Ricky. Just let him make a ceviche and let him be. But, I mean, who would come into this? Even literally off the street, you're just asking for, and that's if you handle it perfectly. Pedro didn't do that. Tony did not do that. Maybe most human beings wouldn't. If you handle it 10 out of 10, you're gonna lose years off your life. You're gonna leave bald. It's going to be miserable. Who would do it? And that's who are you going to get? Even at this point, even people in the Royals organization who gets us called like 12 of them already. They're all like, no.
What happened to Pedro? We aren't going there.
Yeah. Or we see your team. We look down at your team. No way. I mean, this is where it was bad when they got Pedro at post Tony or whatever, post what they did to Ricky. It was bad. It was probably Joe Espada. You didn't want to come here. I mean, granted, he was promised a Houston job, whatever. You don't want to come here. I don't even know if he talked to them. You don't want to come here. It's 2 years worse now. I mean, what are we going to get? It's sort of horrifying, but I don't know. Maybe that gets you AJ or Ozzy or Frank Thomas or.
What do you think Buck Showalter's up to these days?
Who's that?
Buck Showalter. What's he doing? The Mets let him go.
Oh my God, the Ozzy would. Oh man, yeah, Ozzy does not like Buck. Man, that would be fun because he would be Monday morning quarterbacking, like in game. He'd be breaking into the broadcast just to start spouting about what a jerk Buck would be. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be somebody, but again, Buck. I'm sure he's like, well, yeah, still, I want the job. I'm sure you get sort of like addicted to being one of those 30 guys, but even he might be like, I'll take my chances with the other 29 teams calling, even the Mets. I'll take chances of them calling me back than going to the White Sox. I mean, that's something that we're sort of, I mean, all the jazz and all the excitement. I mean, granted, Chris gets his like fake excitement and fake self-congratulatory. I'm proud of where the organization's at. What in the world are you talking about, son? In all of this is a dangerous situation with the White Sox. I mean, who is going to be attracted to come here? They picked Pedro Grifol like out of nowhere. He was not. I mean, that's the guy they got 2 years ago. Who are they going? They're not even going to be able to get a Pedro Grifol this time.
Yeah, man, I remember having these similar conversations when we were talking about, and I remember I was kind of the one that ended up just by default writing about the rumors of the managerial search and stuff. And it wasn't like we had this plethora of like wonderful people to pick from the last time. And yeah, 2 years worse, and now a below 500 soon to be all-time record, and a bunch of unproven players and unproven front office people. Like there's just not a whole lot to be like, yeah, sign me up for that.
It's going to be Andrew Benintendi as a player manager.
Hey, if it gets him off the field, maybe I could maybe get behind that. Just get him out of left field.
Jose Abreu, anyone?
Oh man, hey now. Granted, I mean, I don't think he has fond memories of the White Sox at this point, but I imagine who they're going to hire going to be worse than that. So what I'm saying is my dream of Tadahito Iguchi is still alive. Of course, Tadahito is definitely smart enough to say, no friggin' chance am I going to do this. I don't care how many legit non-gambling interpreters you hire to help me out with dealing with the very demanding Chicago White Sox media. Man, those guys. Ask a question. Okay. Well, if that doesn't inspire you to the future, did I say something around midpoint that we're going to be talking somehow like optimistically or something? Oh boy. You You get to skip. Okay, audience, you get to skip the next podcast because I lied to you. Last podcast, it was the graphics breaking down and the production team doing such a poor job. You notice there's no little cutesy headlines. If you're watching, we had to can those people. We're looking now for a new character generator and production team. So now, yes, you are permitted. You won't want to. I know you're not going to take me up on this, but you are permitted to skip a podcast now that we lied so bald-faced to you on that. There's very little to be optimistic with this team, and I imagine that's why you're listening, because goodness gracious, we'll all have to sort of bond over the horrors of this season, and it just seems to be getting worse, because now we do have to look, in spite of Chris Getz's false optimism about the future, we all have to look to a future where at the end of the year, at some point, Lord knows they're going to push it to February or something, a new manager is going to be brought in, and that person is likely to be more ill-equipped or with more weird baggage than Pedro Grifol. Maybe more so than Tony La Russa, who at least had connection with the team. I'm in a bizarre week one that you shouldn't be counting on 20 years after being fired, or 40 years after being fired. Even 20 years wouldn't be good. 40 years, definitely not good. So maybe Ricky's the only one who can save us. Ricky?
No, David Ross, you are the new manager.
No. I don't know what's going to make me stop being a White Sox fan, but if Mike Clevenger didn't, I guess I could survive David Ross, but man, you're just making me more and more unhappy.
We don't even have the off season to look forward to either. Every off season I feel is a little bit hopeful, but last off season was so lame. And then Getz made it pretty clear today too, that it was when he was asked about, if the money will be spent when, and Chris was like, well, it's, when it's time, the money will be there, but it's not time. So
isn't it cute that it's never time? So you really do get out of making that answer ever having a fun. There's never time. Manny Machado's right there. Bryce Harper's right there, but apparently it's not time, even though they made the best offers. That's sickening. This is Chicago. This isn't, Tampa being run like a smaller market. This isn't a legit super small market, which maybe you would excuse that. Even then you'd say, hey, you're all making scads of money. You can... the money's not going to be spent. And the pipeline of talent. Yes, things have taken a step up. Birmingham's about a 500 team. Charlotte might be a 500 team by the end of the year. Kannapolis is above 500. So overall, the organization is about 500. We have Brooks Baldwin up with the team. Drew Thorpe, sort of mixed results, but certainly you can make a case. Okay, there's something to be excited about there. There's not guys chomping at the bit in other organizations, just there's 40 guys in the organization who could be playing in the major leagues. That's just not the case yet with the White Sox. Edgar Carroll we can get excited about for 2025. I think it ends there. So it's not even like we can say, well, man, the youth movement, let's see if the kids can play. Maybe we'll get a little taste of that even, here in September, or even August. But I'm sort of afraid to get the answer because I'm not sure they can. Play. So, well, hopefully we'll have months in the off season to figure out something to be excited about, because right now I can't think of anything.
Sox Fest should be fun.
Oh, yeah, Sox. It's they're not going to find a way to cancel. Are you kidding me? Cancel or very severely limit. They're going to severely limit that.
Yeah, in the past, how there used to be the panel with Kenny and Rick, and they're so not going to do that. But if they do, people are going to be coming with the tomatoes and the bottles.
It would be interesting, but I don't think I'm not sure anybody should have the brass to face that, but the White Sox definitely don't. My goodness. So
you're going to create a new global pandemic just to get out of
No kidding. Yes. Yeah. Everybody in the front office is going to just start just coughing for a week. It's sorry.
Plague.
Yeah. Well, again, all you thousands of faithful viewers and listeners and readers, we are sorry to disappoint that we can't really uptalk this too wonderful, because here's the problem. We should all really be happy for one day. Think about, I wasn't here, which is probably why everybody was so happy, but think about a year ago when Rick Hahn and Ken Williams were dismissed before we knew, although we could have assumed that Chris Getz was going to take over. There was legitimate oxygen in the room. There was some buoyancy, And we can't even have that because we just know, all right, the next guy's chance is probably going to be worse. It's clearly not going to be markedly better. And that's tough. We don't even get a second. I mean, I remember the window was very brief, that there was actual happiness about Rick and Ken being gone. But this is like, it doesn't exist. There's no honeymoon period here, because immediately we have to think about, we had the press conference today where Chris Gutz is talking falsely optimistically and still answering questions in the wrong way, like no money's going to be spent. Now we're going outside the organization, which means we're calling Kansas City. Nothing to be optimistic about. I'm sorry to both of you having to suffer through that, myself, even as a longer time fan, and to all the listeners and readers and viewers, because this is a bad place to be. I mean, we're like we should, by any measure, be like relegated, not just relegated triple, we should be relegated to like A ball, based on, morally, performance, spending to win, messaging, solving shootings in the park. I mean, hiring the domestic abusers.
So, question: do you
Please.
think anyone would actually notice if we swapped the current White Sox team with the Cannonballers for like a couple games? Do you think anybody would actually notice a difference?
No, and the fact that there'd be like, how they notice, there'd be like hustle, and there'd be that fast play, so people would be like, wait a minute. And then they'd have to zoom in, and we do like a bunch of like Zaprootering of the players, like, hey, wait a minute,
That's not Luis Roberts.
that's Walco. Wait a minute, yeah, right. So, they'd notice like for all the wrong reasons, and then the Sox would be like, oh, all right, just keep them up. We had to free up all these 40-man spots. Just whatever, and they do better. They got to do better than Andrew Benintendi, future manager. Andrew Benintendi. Yeah, that's the terms. Andrew, I got good news. You can be the next manager. The bad news is you're going to retire. You're going to be a really well-paid manager, though. Big home run year for him, Chrystal. You must be pretty jacked about that. I mean, he blew your prediction out of the water of, 6 or 2 or whatever.
And you know what? We got rid of the only one that was actually hitting home runs. That was leading the pack.
Yeah.
He's gone. Now we're just stuck with Benintendi forever.
Yeah, well, but here the good news is Jerry saved some fireworks. Come on now.
True.
Yeah, he's not gonna roll that over into a longer post game whatever Saturday show. No. Those get earmarked for next year or 2027 or whatever. See what you've done to us, White Sox. This is just how we're not even being mean. This is just like how we woke up feeling about this team. We're not trying to be mean at all. Trust me, you don't want to hear that. You probably have heard that. We're being cool with you guys, and this is where it's at. These are the frowns that you have failed to turn upside down, and probably won't for some time. 2031 might be back above water.
I was very mean in my contribution to Bleed Cubby Blue for this preview.
Good.
I could have been a lot meaner. I didn't want to disrespect Al. I know he doesn't like a lot of swearing. Could have been way meaner, but
yeah.
It's brutal. It's like an obituary almost.
Yeah, Chrystal. He rejected my first because my first earlier this year for the first was all cussing. So he said I could print it blank or not, and so then my tactic was that the whole season's a fantasy and the season's been canceled. So what a shame that the Cubs don't get a chance to run for that division, and I'm sure that stung some eyes among the Cubbies fans, especially because as it turns out. Last place team. A little moment of deliciousness and happiness in this very, very tragic and sad season. That a team that actually thought they were going somewhere. I mean, we knew we were going to lose 100 games. They thought they were going somewhere. Anyway, and again, I'll predict. And Chrystal, I'll get your prediction. We already know Melissa, as a smart fan, says it's 2 losses end of the week. I, the contrarian, say no. True to form with this crosstown series. White Sox are going to surprise. They're going to win 2. I have a feeling how you answer, but what do you think is going to happen this pre-weekend into weekend 2 games against the Cubs to finish out the crosstown series?
So it's funny because I still think the Cubs are going to take both of them.
Okay.
But the White Sox are going to win 1 against the Yankees. It's like the amazing first place Yankees.
Okay.
I mean, close enough. They're going to take 1 against the Yankees, but they're going to just completely bomb against the Cubs.
This is a block of ugly games. I mean, if you're a good fan, if you're a good human being, these are the 2 teams you hate the most. This is a rough is it a 3-game series with the Yankees? Whatever. This is a rough 5 or 6 games coming up, and yeah, I mean, I'd rather have my prediction come true, and will, by beating the Cubs twice. But yeah, a win against the Yankees. I mean, anything against these evil empires is good. And let me remind you, White Sox fans, you already know this because you're White Sox fans. You're listening to this because I'm guessing not too many people just stop by and you're San Diego Padres fans. But as bad as this is, as much pain as we've been going through for 50 minutes talking about this, we're not Cubs fans. We don't have that ownership. And our ownership is horrible. But we still are not Cubs fans and don't have that ownership. So, and there's a lot better chance of this getting a little bit better and some oxygen in the room on the White Sox side than it is the Ricketts prying that team out of their cold, dead, clammy, fascist hands. So, hey, we're not that. See, you got the optimism. You're no longer allowed to skip the next podcast. You got your optimism. We're not Cubs fans. All right. Sorry, Sage-Bollenbach. Hey, sorry. You made the choice. Sorry. Well, okay. Melissa, thanks so much for showing up again. See you tomorrow night, because, again, it's the daily podcast. Chrystal, rest the voice, although I know you're a little ahead now on visiting a dugout, so maybe you got a chance to come back real quick.
I'm ahead, but I also have dugout of history to record.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well,
and it's a Chrystal episode, so I got to talk the whole time.
Oh, I see. Well, I was going to say hi to Colleen, but at some point you'll be talking with her again, so say hi to her for us. And, yeah, I guess if not Chrystal, Melissa, well, see you Saturday, because we'll have another podcast once the Sox are under 500 for the foreseeable future and maybe forever, maybe some of our lifetimes. I dare say mine, because 2031 is not going to come around and get us back over. I mean, this is not turning around as fast as I even soberly said so. But so as soon as Saturday, with the, as predicted by Chrystal and as predicted by Melissa and as predicted by Joe and as predicted by Dante Jones, after the sweep, the White Sox will be under 500 as a franchise for the second time in franchise 124 years of franchise history. That will merit a Saturday or, I don't know, Sunday podcast. We'll be talking to you again soon. So, Melissa, I know you're busy on the weekends, but me might get the bat signal. And, Chrystal, you're always welcome as well. If not, I'll just talk to you, sad sack, sad, dour, angry White Sox fans, and we'll go through the mechanics of somehow becoming, after 68 years, a losing franchise once again. Anyhow, we have that to look forward to. Enjoy the Crosstown series. Thank you again, Chrystal O'Keefe, for making the time. Melissa Sage-Bollenbach for always making the time. Look forward to the next ladies' night and the many, many already in the can, visiting dugouts. Thanks, everybody, for listening, watching, reading, whatever it is you're doing, however it is you're finding us. Appreciate that you're here with us. One day we'll get happier. We'll up talk again. I don't know, Soxivus or something. We'll lie. Or we'll just do a history podcast about that 1 year that they were good. But until then, hang out, be miserable with us. We'll be back being miserable with you as soon as just a couple days from now. Take care until then.